Today I'm going to show how to remove and install a flywheel ring gear. This mainly applies to manual transmissions with actual flywheels, because on automatics with the flex plates usually the gears are welded on, so if you want to replace those you got to cut it off and then have it recentered and welded back on, and sometimes balanced. But with these manual ones, they're pretty easy. They actually do come off, so I'm going to show how to do that. This flywheel is off of a Ford 200, one of my 6-cylinders, and you can see the teeth are really badly chewed up. In some spots there's almost no teeth left. So I'm going to show how to remove it and then how to put a new one on. And I'm also going to show how you can reuse your old one to a certain point. So first thing, you're going to want to pull your old one off. Now there's a couple ways to do this. Some people use a torch and you just heat the thing up and then pop it off. I found that you really don't need a torch. I like to put a nice piece of solid wood underneath of it, put it on a concrete floor or something really solid, and then you can usually use a punch and a hammer and go all the way around on the other side, and eventually it'll pop off. Another way, if it's really stuck on there, you can actually cut a notch in here. You gotta be careful not to hit the flywheel itself, but you can cut a notch in there and then put a chisel in it and start whacking it, and it'll split the gear and it'll come off that way. But I've had good luck with just setting it on a nice solid concrete floor and whacking it. So I'm going to set it up and I'll show you how that works. Now if you're putting a new ring gear on here, this doesn't matter, but what I'm going to do is I've actually got another ring gear here. This is used, and you can see it's a little bit chewed up on this side, but the other side is still good because the starter hasn't really contacted it, because the starter contacts it from this side. So what I'm going to do, this is kind of an old farm trick, is you can actually flip this gear so that you'll have fresh material where the starter contacts it. Now since this particular gear is really badly chewed up to the point where there's almost no teeth left, I could reuse this and just reorient it, because say on an inline 6 the motor is going to stop because of compression in one of 3 spots, and those 3 spots are going to be 120 degrees apart. So if you notice this one, there's a lot of wear here and up here, and those are 120 degrees apart. So what I can do is I can actually put some fresh material in this spot in relation to the flywheel, so that way the starter is not really going to be wearing on this because it's almost gone already. So what I'm going to do in my case, I'm going to use this gear and then flip this one and also reorient it so it'll be almost like a new one. So if you're going to flip and reorient your gear, first thing you're going to want to do before you pop it off is mark where the worn spots are, because on a flywheel or a flex plate even, it only bolts onto the crankshaft in one orientation. So the flywheel is not going to move in relation to the crankshaft, so you can't just move the flywheel a bit. You have to move the ring gear in relation to the flywheel. So the first thing you want to do is mark where the worn spots are so that you can put the fresh material in that spot after you pull this off, because once you pull it off you're not going to know where the worn spots are. So I'm going to mark this and then I'll show how to pull the gear off. Okay, so I got the marks made. This was a Sharpie, and you can see they are about 120 degrees apart. So now after I take this flywheel gear off, I can move this unworn section to over here, so that way the starter won't be skipping and whatnot when it goes to start the motor. So now that I've got that marked, I'm going to flip it over because this goes on one way and it's got a shoulder on it here, so you want to hammer it off from this side. And it's got a concrete floor, nice and solid, and basically just take a big chisel and start hammering it, go evenly all the way around and just keep going around until it pops off. Okay, so now I've taken this other ring gear and I found where the worn spots are, which are right here and here, and I've marked basically right in the middle of them so that when I go to put this on, that lines up with one of these marks here. So now we're going to have to heat this up because this is a press fit, so you can't really just hammer it on there. It kind of gets on there, but it's not enough. So you want to heat this up and that'll expand the metal. It'll drop right on there. Then when it cools, it contracts and shrinks to fit the flywheel. So now all I have to do is heat it up and then line up this mark with one of these marks, so it'll be nice and easy. Also, you want to make sure you put it on the right way. On this particular motor, this is going to be the back, then the starter is going to engage from this side. So you want the fresh teeth on this side and the worn up against here. So now we're going to heat this up and throw it on there. So I've got this ridiculous thing. This is a weed burner. Now what I've done before is I just get a bonfire going and put some grates over the fire and then set this on there for 20-30 minutes and then it heats it up. But this time I'm going to try this ridiculous thing and see how it works. This is just a propane torch, but it supposedly gets up to 2000 degrees, which I kind of doubt, but should be enough to heat that up. So it's not super thick, so I'm going to try this out. So you can see it just fell right on there once it's expanded. And I got my mark lined up with one of those marks, so it's exactly where it needs to be. I've got the fresh side facing towards the motor, where the starter is, and it's way expanded right now. Once it starts to tighten up, I'll tap it a couple times, make sure it's fully seated. And that's about all there is to it. Once it shrinks, it'll be fitted to the flywheel and it won't move. So that's that. So after it's on there, you want to go all the way around and check, make sure that there's no gaps between that shoulder on the flywheel and the back of the gear. And if it is, while it's still warm, you can usually tap it on there. So this one looks pretty much perfect. So that is how to remove, install, flip, and reorient a ring gear.